Everybody at home, thanks for turning on your TV onto this channel this time. Got a little song called If You Want to Get to Heaven, Gotta Raise a Little Hell. Come on,
Hey,
sing it.
Color Me Dad is a podcast about anything we think is interesting or funny, including lots of music and pop culture discussion, and of course dadisms ad-libbed by us, three friends who have cracked each other up for the last 25 years. You're gonna love this episode called The Good Old Days.
I never read it in a book, I never saw it on a show, but I heard it in the alley on the weird radio. If you want a drink of water, you got to get it from a well. If you want to get to heaven, you got to raise a little hell. Never felt it in my feet, I've never felt it in my soul, but I heard it in the alley, now it's in my rock and roll. If you want to know the secret,
How's this?
you got to
That just makes me up a little bit, up a little bit, up a little bit. There you go.
Can I have more of me, please?
That 5K is a little high. You probably want to back that off. Bring up the 7K.
You remember the the GNR version of Hair of the Dog on the Spaghetti Incident? Where
No.
it starts off, you hear like the drums start up, and you hear Axl go, "Give me a little bit of volume on this."
Because, you know, the alternative music is like relaxed and not, you know, they're just talking. Hey, man, we're just talking.
They were listening back. He's like, "You know what? Just leave that in. That sounds real."
That sounds for real, dog. Yeah. I'm Axl Rose.
They have a TikTok, and it's pretty sad.
Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
What are they TikToking about?
I mean,
how they're
it's-
old?
It's just mostly like live footage of their shows. And Slash looks exactly the same as he did.
Dude,
But Axl looks like...
he's still
somebody's
killing it. He's killing
mammal.
it.
You talking about Slash?
All of them.
Oh.
They are great.
Did you see him?
Yes.
Wow.
It is great.
I'm going to say the same thing about Def Leppard. I saw him in 2016. It was not even real.
Do
It was
not doubt that.
fantastic.
I never got to see them. I do not doubt that. I will say 100% legit, no lie, on God. Remember that?
On God. You give it to me. Give it to me straight.
They played Estranged, and I totally cried. I mean, like, I wasn't weeping, but I did tear up.
My dad cries when Guns N' Roses plays.
I have a weird emotional
Yeah.
attachment to that song.
Okay.
Like, it's real.
Loosen that, drop it down, and then tighten it, and I think you'll be perfect.
Don't raise it.
We're ready to raise it. And here.
I've been saying that to Audrey when I pick her up. Let's raise it.
Let's raise it.
Look at this kid. Let's raise it. That's a fizzy.
we got
that's
it.
a fizzy drink you got there.
You know what? I'm not fancy enough for this, but it's like one of those things as you get older.
Is it like sparkling water?
It is, yes. There's no sugar. It's just carbonated water.
So do you drink like LaCroix or LaCroix or whatever it's
LaCroix,
called?
LaCroix.
Spindrift or any of that
I
kind of
have
stuff?
never had that. So
We've talked about this.
I worked at a place that had this in the fridge, cold, and so every now and then you're like, man, I'm just thirsty, and it grows on you to the point where now I don't work there, and I'm out buying this crap.
My wife loves that kind of stuff, and she tried to turn me onto it, and to me, it's
It's an acquired taste for sure.
It makes me angry because it has the beginnings of a soda with none of the good parts of the sugar or the sweet taste.
Episode, what is this?
11?
Maybe
Or 12?
10. We're not sure. We'll have to count back, but it's in there. It's going to be in there.
Who cares?
And the episode entitled "Who Cares?" At this point, if you've hung with us,
I've washed my hands of it.
It gives a rip.
What are you guys doing? How you guys been? We haven't seen each other for a couple.
it's been a long time, yeah, since we've had an episode.
Is there anything new and exciting? Or
I've been listening to this podcast that's going to launch today. It's called Life's a Beach. I've
oh,
been listening to you tell about your car story, and it's
again
fun.
a car story.
Yeah, right. It's like a brand new to me now because I was editing it.
Life is a beach.
And
It can be.
It can be if you can get there.
That episode also is the beginning of baby Andy.
Yeah,
when
that's
she
right.
was here. So how is baby Andy?
She turned 3 months old yesterday,
Unbelievable.
and she
She working?
With you handling her, I'm surprised she made it.
that makes 2 of us.
Actually, about 4 of us. Your wife, your mom.
Yeah, everybody's like,
CPS.
"How have you not killed
My
her yet?"
mom.
CPS.
Actually, surprisingly enough, like she likes me a lot. I mean,
She don't know. She don't know better. Kids don't know better.
I'm just as shocked as you are.
yeah, I was really shocked. I thought, that she would. I mean, obviously she has a bond with Tara, but I was surprised at how quickly the bond between her and I formed.
Well, kids like cartoons.
They do. We have the same faces.
And you play my cartoons. Play my cartoons.
Speaking of a first show that she loves, this is hilarious to us. So we're trying. She just probably within the past 10 days discovered that we have a television. I don't know if her eyesight finally got to the point.
Say goodbye to it.
Well, she likes this show on Netflix called Chip and Potato, which is a cartoon. But that's not the funny part. The show that she loves the most is Guy's Grocery Games. Do you know what show I'm talking about?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have Netflix anymore.
This is not Netflix.
don't
This
have
is
to
on the
watch
Food
it.
Network.
Oh, they're running around picking up shopping stuff.
It's a Guy Fieri show where there's like 4 contestants. They run around and get stuff out of the grocery store, and then they have a cooking competition. I don't know how
So it's like a modern version of Supermarket Sweep.
kinda, but
Remember
with
that?
cooking.
You know how they used to the game
Yeah.
show where they
Okay, so they're going to find ingredients and then they cook something.
Yeah, and there's several rounds. I don't know how. I think maybe it was just on, and she was there, and she kind of discovered that she liked it. But
you're gonna be giving her the bottle. You're gonna be giving her the bottle soon, and she's gonna be like, "It's time to go to Flavor Town."
the past 2 days, we have this little bouncer. We set her in it, point her towards the TV, put that on. She's happy. She
me tell
watches
you,
it for hours.
Amazing.
I'm gonna stand up for.
That's like in the cartoons when the egg cracks and the duck looks at the cat and like, "Mama." Your kid's gonna be like, "Guy Fieri, my
I'm gonna
dad."
stand up. I'm gonna stand up for Guy Fieri. Is that how you pronounce his last name? I don't want to sound like a moron.
I think it's Fieri, but
You will sound like a moron no matter how you say it.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I will say this: that dude is one of those guys that, for whatever reason,
gets a ton of hate.
He's in Nickelback. Whoever you talk to, they hate him. I absolutely love Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
Oh, me too.
I enjoy watching that dude. If you actually look up a bunch of stuff, I've actually even seen articles online where they're like, everyone hates this guy. He gave this much to charity this year. It's like he's one of those guys that he's just universally hated. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, and it's not like he's incompetent or anything like that. He's a good host. I mean,
Yeah, he's a
I assume he
television-
can cook. I'm not really a restaurant.
He's a television personality.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
it's like-
people hate the fact that he is an individual. You know what I mean? When somebody has the courage to be who they are, whether it's
I just don't understand the cut or the difference. Like, I hate Guy Fieri. I like Duck Dynasty. I mean, not that that's still a thing, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's,
like, why that?
that's why
I only like pickers.
that's why
Don't
there's-
give me nothing but
that's why there's
garage
different
sales.
television shows. Like, that's why there's 9,000 shows of dudes cooking, because you might not like this one.
I think people got a little sick of him. Like there in the beginning when he first became a thing, there was a lot of him.
Oversaturation.
Yeah.
Metallica.
There's a lot of Metallica.
Hey, everybody knows Metallica now who didn't know who they were because they were on Stranger Things. I love that.
That's one of those things that I didn't know that people didn't know that Metallica was a thing.
Did you just say? Did you just say Metallica?
Yeah, Metallica.
Because I
Metallica.
just thought about.
I'm going to McDonald's to
Just
get me
thought
a
about the most awesome burger. Like
The
you know how
Metallica?
yeah, they did like the Travis Scott
Metallica.
combo and stuff like that. How they could have the Metallica burger. With like,
But the McDonald's
it's
logo
just-
is the Metallica M that everybody draws.
yeah, it's just meat, cheese, and a piece of metal.
Harvester of chicken nuggets. Harvester of apple pies.
Master Nuggets.
Perfect.
Master Nuggets and a sweet tea.
That's a good one.
I would
That's
get
a good
that.
one.
Have you? I mean, this is old news, but have you ever sat down and watched Some Kind of Monster?
Oh yeah, it's where they cry and they get all.
Dude, it is.
I've watched it
that
a bunch of times.
Right under National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It is. I have a friend of mine, Bryce. If you ever listen to the show, Bryce, I love you and I miss you. He used to come to my house. I mean, when I first came back, this happened 2 to 3 times a week. We worked together, and every day we would get off early, like have an early day. It'd be like, let's go back to your place, have some drinks, and watch some kind of monster. And we never got. I was just as excited about it
Every time.
It's so good.
It's like the Dancing Outlaw, the original.
Now that being said, though, I've never been a Metallica fan.
What?
Because I have also brought this up to people that actually are really big Metallica fans.
Like everybody.
And they don't
That
like,
have
they
been
don't
like,
like it.
well, no, I mean like the
It's
really,
offensive.
really, yeah. And
It's
they're like-
offensive to them.
It kind of is to me. I
Well,
mean,
I'm a Metallica fan, but I gave them appropriate righteous grief for that thing because it's like, I don't know, and the whole meme of him standing there outside of Versace's or whatever with the big bags and
Yeah,
stuff.
the-
He's in the shorts, and-
bargains.
yeah, no, they're like expensive clothing.
No, right, but there's a classic meme with that where he's sitting there holding the bags and they're like,
Bargains.
Bargains are all that I see. Absolute savings.
Get in my bag.
the Metallica that exists now is not Metallica to me. Like,
Yeah.
I have this disconnect in my mind about, pre-Black Album, and I know some hardcore fans would be pre-Justice for All, but anything
So you don't
loaded-
consider the Black Album to be
No,
Metallica?
that's the end point. That's the end point of good Metallica.
Okay.
And even that's questionable. But everything after that is they have lost their minds.
They cut their hair.
I didn't really have so much of a problem with that, but they just put out garbage. I mean, it's like
You realize it's connected to sobriety. Like, that's the sad part of it. No, it really is. If you watch that thing and listen, like, they got sober, they got it together because it was falling apart. But back when they were incredible and the world was like, we can't believe this exists, like, there's a story in that book I read. I think I've mentioned it on the show before, called Hair
Van Halen
Metal.
thing.
No, it's all about hair metal. And it was something about in San Francisco, like somebody driving, and literally they had heard of Metallica, they had seen them, and across the street is a bunch of people crossing in front of them in the car, and James Hetfield bangs on the hood of their car screaming because he's just out of his mind, probably drinking,
Yeah.
And so in their heyday, they were messed up.
That's
Well,
true, but
a lot of people referred to him as Alcoholica.
Right.
I think that there is something else going on there, which is I think if you've been
Women.
No, you guys are missing.
James, you got to settle down,
No,
buddy.
it's so unfair. It's so unfair. And trust me, I'm not taking up for Metallica. I couldn't care less.
Well, give it to
but
us.
we
What
do
is
this
it?
all the time. You're like, oh, did the band that you used to like, did they start writing different songs when they were 40 instead of 20?
No, it's
because,
not.
when you're 20, it's okay to think about murder and stuff and killing.
It's not that at
when
all.
you're 40 and rich, you don't really think about that.
It's the fact that they tried to write the same songs and they were bad.
Oh, you mean like
they
they tried to push the envelope.
They had a limited amount of ability and I don't know what to call it, but like booze. Kill 'Em All to the Black Album was their catalog of the peak of how good they were.
Yep.
They ran out of magic after that.
They're
And-
beating the dead horse.
they should have just been like, look at this catalog that we had from 1982 or whenever.
So you're saying they
today
should have
was.
just stopped instead of kept going?
Yes. Go tour on all your songs. Nobody gives a crap
And
about Reloaded or
20 years.
Whiskey in the Jarro.
Right. 20
That's-
years after they lost it, they're on stage at, I don't even remember what it was, American Music Awards or something. And there's a mosh pit on stage. Did you see that? They had a big flaming thing, big fire. And then they had like, a bunch of people in a little barricade. And you're like, ready? 3, 2, 1, mosh.
Yeah.
And they're a bunch of actors moshing on stage. And guys, that's candy corn.
The best example is Saint Anger. They tried to be like, let's recapture what it sounds like to make an album in a garage. And it sounded like just
Garbage.
God, it was awful.
Made for a hell of a movie, though.
It was just terrible.
But that's still, it's still unfair because those guys are banned, and those guys, you're welcome to like it, buy it, or don't. And millions on top of millions kept buying it. I actually have heard people that I actually respect that their favorite stuff they did was later in that. I'm not saying I agree with that
They're
whatsoever,
wrong.
but Sure. But what I'm saying is you can't be like, I personally don't like this anymore, so stop. Like, they're not going to stop. They're millionaires. They're supporting their families, and they enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, because they lost so much from Napster.
Hey, I love the memes. I sent you guys one the other day where it was like some kid sings Metallica on TikTok or something, and it's just heartwarming. Lars Ulrich sends him a message.
Yeah.
You owe me royalties.
No.
They totally deserve
I'm
that.
just saying, you can't be like, these people aren't going to, like, he comes home and his wife's like, what's wrong, James? Some guy wrote on the internet that he doesn't like us now. We can't do it anymore. We got to stop.
I'm embarrassed for them. It's
Speaking of
They're
unfair,
doing just fine.
speaking of unfair
They are
criticism,
terrible.
Speaking of unfair criticism, that's the mail call. The mail. Speaking of defending people with unfair criticism, we have one mail message this week.
We're somebody coming after us?
Well, we intentionally kept this from Andy because
great.
I had to log in to the mailbox and get it and save it and forward it and then delete it and then delete it from deleted items and then delete it from sent items.
I don't even know how to check it.
Well, good.
That'll save you some trouble next time.
You told me once, but I didn't pay attention.
It's in that thing I shared. So this note is from Phil. We'll just say Phil. We'll leave off the specifics. But Phil says, "Hi, been listening to y'all's podcast, and I like most of it so far." I'm going to read it like Phil because he says y'all's, Yals, not LL, but LS. Been listening to y'all's podcast and like most of it so far. Have been mostly enjoyable experience. You guys have some funny stories and some good chemistry. Boy, he's caught it. A couple of recommendations I have, though. First, it gets a little old listening to you guys talk about old punk bands that you all like constantly. Let me tell you something, Phil. You are wrong.
Yeah, number one, too bad.
We haven't talked about the Ramones, Misfits much at all. So get ready for that, Phil. Like, we get it. Y'all are old, retired musicians. Let me tell you something, Phil. I'm active, okay? I had to play music this morning. I had to cover, all kinds of stuff. It's a Sunday. We're God's favorite dad-flavored podcast, by the way, releasing on Sundays. Another thing I'm a little tired of is, I guess, Andy. Dude seems to be pretty okay, I guess, but it seems like y'all really do point out how lazy this dude is. We do that, Phil. Like, he can't find the time to go to the town Walmart and buy some new shorts or even mow his yard regularly. You zeroed in on it, Phil. You got us. Just saying, sounds like a lazy teenager. A lazy teenager to me, even though from the sound of it, he's probably 50 years old. You can see why we kept this from you. This is great. Looking forward to the next episode, but maybe give Andy a week off to get his yard straightened out and buy some clothes. Best Phil. Phil, we love you, man. Thank you for that. And he is lazy. And when he's 50, he'll still be lazy.
Thank you for that digital bag tag.
Yeah.
I love this Ask Andy thing. Listen, if you're listening, send us a note. It can be whatever you want it to be.
I'll let you. Do you have a response to that?
Actually, I cut my grass Friday, and I almost passed out. I mean, it was so hot. I hadn't done it in like 3 weeks. I was putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. My yard was so high. And
his lawn's higher than me.
Yeah,
Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah,
his yard high as a giraffe's ass.
It was a mess. But I'll be honest, like, I'm getting to the point where I kind of enjoy it now. It's a good way to burn off some excess, I guess, nervous energy. It's
Cool.
It's nice. Like, I got my grass looking like the little grass blocks from Mario Brothers.
You know it comes back, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. That is the problem.
And you know, despite what your instincts say, cut it as short as possible. You really don't want to do that. You want to keep that blade high, Hank Hill,
I don't. I totally mow it down.
because then it dies.
It doesn't matter how I do it. Within 3 days, it looks like I haven't touched it. I don't know what it is about the grass and Guyandotte, but it is just constant.
A lot of guys go to Guyandotte for the grass.
Yeah.
You can check out our documentary on Netflix.
This is Guyandotte. It takes.
called Heroin and Dirty.
It's about 3.5 minutes,
Guyandotte's
No,
actually
there's
not
a
that
legit.
bad.
I mean, that's a legit. There's a heroin documentary.
but it's not about Guyandotte.
No. No. I mean, I'm sure it's featured.
Is that where they follow the fire crews around
Yeah.
overdoses?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
But I do want to say, in response to that email,
Yeah.
I have personally, I will agree to an extent that, and I've said to you, I do agree to some extent, we overspeak about the obscure bands and music and stuff like that, as we're doing it, I'm like, no one listening to this has any idea what we're talking about. And I get that it would get boring. And I recognize that.
There's a million other podcasts. If you don't like it, find
Sure.
another one.
However,
That's how I feel about
at playing devil's advocate, we have to do that because young people's music today is so damn awful that
Except White
if
Reaper.
we don't tell you about it, then you'll just keep listening to that same garbage that you are.
Except White Reaper. They're new and they're great. And so we could talk about White Reaper. That makes Phil happy. But wonderful new band. And if you like White Reaper, you like some of the old stuff we talk
Sure,
about.
there's
and
a
chew on.
Machine Gun Kelly podcast.
And
I'm
also,
sure.
These are things called jokes. We'll be telling you right here.
Like, yeah, them bands y'all talk about are jokes.
I don't think that we're going to convince people one way or the other in terms of, like, I don't think there's a bunch of young people listening to our podcast that are like, maybe I'll check out Superdrive.
Not with that. Not with
Well,
that,
they should.
Not with that kind of attitude.
You know that I work with a guy who tells me about his kid. And the kid is so into Nirvana. This is like a 12, 13-year-old kid. And so I don't discount at all that people would be into music that came out in 94, 95, 96.
But they have to feel like they discovered it.
They have to feel that way. It's not that way. Somebody turned them on to it, whether it's pop culture or...
I read on Twitter where this guy was talking about how his kid discovered The Cure and then tried to come to him and was like, I found this new band.
Oh.
And he was like,
Did you now?
Really?
Did you now? 1979, Boys Don't Cry. That's when my wife was born.
I saw I ran into an old friend yesterday or the day before. Yesterday, I think. Dane. Hey, Dane, if you're listening.
Dane.
And Dane was there with one of his kids, and the kid's, I think, 15, around that age. And the kid looked so cool and like so indie rock. And I got
Dane has brought him up properly.
I got so jealous.
What's that kid
Because-
into?
He was wearing a shirt that said, I'm going to forget that. I've heard of this band for years now, and something like Jehu. It's like Drive Like Jehu.
No
it's
idea.
an indie band that's been around for a minute, but that's how old I am. I don't even remember.
You're
the
like,
name.
Jimmy eat what?
It's something around that. But anyway, I just saw him, and I was like, I could tell that him and Dane had the type of relationship as father and son where they could sit around and
They go to
talk
shows
about-
together.
They go to record stores together and whatever. And
He
I
plays
was-
guitar.
And I love my son, my teenager, more than anything in this world. But it is the absolute opposite of that going on with it. It's like,
Guys, you heard of New Kids on the Block? This song, Please Don't Go Girl.
what about New Kids on the Block? Why-
Josh,
Why-
you're saying it's the opposite with your teenager. So I was saying,
New Kids on the Block is the opposite in that
Oh,
equation.
no. I was like, why did you just bring up New Kids on the Block?
What does he listen to? Or does he listen to music?
He does, and it's a mix now of the modern disposable pop and rap. That doesn't bother me. It is. I mean, and that, and now the new country. But
oh my
Is there a
God.
it's
new
also,
country?
and here's the thing.
He
too.
plays this stuff out loud in his, like a speaker or in his ears?
It's in his room. And
I mean, he does.
And
go
it's
to
not.
school in
Here's the
Kentucky.
thing. Though. Here's the thing.
I like Katy Perry. That's a lie. But
And he has these new friends now, and he is becoming very country and very good old boy.
You live in Kentucky.
Let me explain this to you. Because here's what I know what people are thinking. I had this conversation with my wife like yesterday. People that know me, and I'm sure, and I've even had like someone bring this up to me. People that know me automatically think, and you people listening to this are going to think, oh, Josh has a problem with that because he's doing the redneck thing. Josh hates rednecks. Blah 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 blah. First of all, my entire family, all rednecks.
Me too.
I love them more than anything. When I was gone, and this is no lie, when I was gone, not living here, I used to actually sometimes watch things like Duck Dynasty and stuff on TV because I missed my family.
You lived in Georgia. How did you not?
how did you not have?
Atlanta and Georgia are two totally different places.
I got you.
Okay.
I saw no country where I was at.
Okay.
So people automatically think that like I'm mad or whatever. I'm like, my kid ain't gonna. It's not that at all. What it is I know my son very well. I know how he is. I know the things that he really likes and where he's at and where his headspace is. He's not that way. These new friends that he has are that way, and that's fine. It's not an issue where I don't want my son to be like this because I don't like it. I don't want my son to be someone that he's not.
So if your son truly was a redneck,
You gotta.
Absolutely.
driving
Or
country.
anything. It's just, I don't want my son, and this is such an important, he's 14 now.
Poser.
And this is such, exactly.
There you go.
And he was in it, but it's not even about like being a poser as like a, that's, stupid. Don't. It's about like, dude, right now you are totally coming into your own identity and finding yourself. So this is, I don't want him to dress and act a certain way or put on this pose for people and not be himself and be like, he's very much a people pleaser.
I mean, that's going to happen. I mean,
And that's what I'm getting at. Like,
It's something you go through as a
It's what I
teenager.
wanted to talk about today was like, this is nothing about him or me coming down on him. I'm saying, man, and you get frustrated, sure. But man, being a parent and having a teenager, it's so crazy sometimes, man, because when you really, I was just really sitting back and really analyzing and thinking a lot about what a teenager is and being a teenager and what it was like when I was a teenager. It's really weird, strange time. And like the concept, like the way you think, the way you are, what's important to you. And as an adult,
acceptance.
Exactly. And as an adult, man, it's so easy for me to sit back and wag my finger at him and be like, this is dumb. But he can't not do that. But you want him to learn, and you're trying to teach him and trying to help him as much as you can. And again, like we talked about on previous episodes, kids versus adults, never going to die. No matter what I tell him or what logic there is there, I'm not going to know anything in his mind.
It takes courage to be yourself, and that's hard to do when you're 14.
Sure.
Especially when
And like
you
we were
wanna
talking
be
to, man,
accepted.
he lives on that Xbox, and you know how toxic that place is.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't imagine being a teenager growing up with social media.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing for us to look back. I mean, we had a telephone. That was it.
Things spread word of mouth. Like if
And the mall. We'd go to the mall and hang out, or go downtown and hang out.
there could the potential for what it can do to a child is. I couldn't imagine having to constantly look on Instagram or Facebook or whatever thing that they mostly use and seeing a constant barrage of things that made me feel bad about myself.
Well, and it's negativity in the comments too, because there's a disconnection you feel. Like, I mean, it hurts as bad. You would never say these things to somebody.
No, you can dehumanize somebody.
Right.
We've seen numerous times, these same quote unquote friends of his, people that he hangs out with on a weekly basis, like his friends, like, because we're parents, man. We monitor his stuff. We look at his stuff sometimes online. Like, we got that stuff to where, we can see what's going on. Because, it is a dangerous place. And these same kids will just straight up just be just so hateful and mean to him and just say just terrible things to him. And then the next day it's like, can you take me over to his house?
And you know, another thing with texting, just texting your wife, your mom, whatever, you know, imagine like saying something is so different than putting in text. Like, I hope you're happy.
Yeah.
Or I hope you're happy.
Yes.
The same words, right?
Me and the wife have totally had the
Me
fact
too.
where I'm like, you can't hear my voice. That I didn't say it like that. I understand.
It's
I
not-
understand that it looks exactly like that.
It's not what you said, it's how you text it.
right. Yeah.
I mean, we have that issue even in person because apparently my tone sucks.
You're a new husband, aren't you, Andy? I will tell you. Oh, this week was 20 years for
Yeah,
me.
congratulations.
I never talk about things like this, so we're going to talk about it today. 20 years.
How's it feel?
It is really odd. I mean, you know, there's a part of me that thought, gosh, not me. But it was,
Probably doesn't feel like 20 years.
no, in a way it doesn't, but in a way, it does. I mean, I remember being really young and meeting my wife and stuff. We've been together 25 years.
I remember you meeting your wife.
I do too.
I remember walking with Coffee at Marshall between classes, and Coffee sitting there talking to me, and then I saw her, and she's coming down the way, and I just broke off.
Bye,
I
Coffee.
tell Coffee later, sorry, man, sorry for walking off in the middle of a conversation, but I did that.
When she was at our baby shower, I was telling her what it was like being around you when you met her.
Interesting. Here, let me hear that.
Just that once you met her, like I had seen you be happy in a way that I had not experienced with you before, and how excited I knew you were when you would have interactions with her, or just to get to spend a little time with her.
I remember the feeling, and these kinds of things like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years makes you think about that stuff. And I remember the feeling. It's like you worry, we're talking about being a teenager today. My teenage years were spent, man, am I ever going to find somebody, that gives a care about me, and to find that at 20 years old, it was like a new world because it felt like something solved.
Were you 20 when you guys got together?
Yep. It's the
I mean,
end of my
that's
20.
odd.
It was
You
my
know,
21st birthday
That's
that
crazy to
we
me.
had a roller
because
skating party.
I've known you so long and I totally don't mean offense by this.
I know what he's getting ready to say.
When you were 20, I looked and thought of you as a 40-year-old man.
I know exactly what you're saying.
When I was 21, my wife and I visited a church for a little while, and we talked to the pastor once, and he said, "So, what are you, 29, 30?" I was 21. It's been that way. And then where we used to work with Andy and I used to work together. I remember my brother came in. He's 5 years older than me, and somebody was in the room that we knew, and I said, "Here's my brother. Who do you think's older?" And she looked, "Definitely you," pointing at me. He's 5 years older than me.
We were talking earlier when I don't remember how it came up in conversation, but we were talking about how, people in their 20s are basically still teenagers. Like, you really don't have anything at all. You have no knowledge until you're at least 30. Wes was fine at probably 12.
He did not go through that. I met Wes. How old were you?
Wes was like 15, and he's like, I got to get a job with a person.
I was 15 when we met.
Yeah.
I had just cut my hair off, and you were 14, and we met in art class. I remember that.
Wes has been the same since I met him.
You'd never heard of the Smiths or Morrissey.
I had not heard of any of those things. I was like, "Can you play Hysteria?"
I could play Hysteria.
Can you teach it to me?
I remember teaching you Hysteria.
I remember sitting in your room with that. You had that pedal board that Chris Beatty had,
Oh, yeah, we were borrowing it probably. It had that red EX140.
and I was like, "This is the coolest thing ever!" Like all of this, is
Little
just
buttons.
Awesome.
What was being a what was being a teenager like for you that you can remember? Like, what were your favorite? What was important to you, and like what was important to you, and what were your like favorite things? Like, what were you super focused on, and what was really?
I feel like my teenage years were odd. I don't feel like when I talk to other people, I feel like they were weird, and it does have a little.
Did you kind of hang out, keep to yourself a lot?
No, I mean, Andy and I were good friends as soon as we met, pretty much when I was 15, and
all kinds of time together.
And the guys that I played music with, I started playing music with them when I was in 7th grade. I was probably 11 years old when it was 1989. when we played our first show. And so I had kind of that group of friends. And then I had a group of friends that, because they were a little bit older. So I had a group of friends that, in junior high that I went to school with, that I kind of hung with and got into more trouble with. And then high school, everything.
You didn't get into any trouble.
I hate to say it, but
a
I
little bit.
really did. I do remember East End of Huntington, me and somebody that Andy knows with me. We were throwing stuff at cars, and we ran from the cops. Like, I remember the cop being, I can still visualize him being, he was out of the car, and he was like walking real slow, like, "Come on, boys, come here," and we just bolted. He thought we weren't going to bolt.
I guess we even. Why don't you tell everyone what dousing is? Come on. It's already out there now.
Okay. So I did.
It's a way you get murdered if you did that today.
I did. We were chased by somebody who we had done wrong to in downtown Huntington, and eventually we were not going to get away. We were in a car, and eventually I just got out and said, "Look, man, I'm sorry."
You're
And
not.
He
why?
put me against the car, grabbed me, and I'm a teenager, and I know, I hadn't been an adult then. I figured he's going to beat the pulp out of me. Maybe he didn't want to go to jail.
Tell them what dousing is.
Man, I can't do it.
What?
I can't put it on the internet, man.
What are you talking about?
Somebody's going to say,
Somebody's
that happened to me.
Okay. Do you think they're going to come after
Do you remember the time that we did it? Remember the dude that was walking into the movies with his wife or his date or whatever?
I don't remember that. I don't think I was there. But
Yeah,
I think I was.
We ruined
I think I have an
his night.
alibi.
Don't you
I think I have an
freaking
alibi.
tell people what
No,
dousing is?
listen. I'm going to tell you this. Right close to where we are right now, there's a cab. There's a bus station.
Yeah.
And we were pulling by that bus station. We were stopped at the red light. And I flicked, I don't know what it was. I don't even know, like a little teeny tiny, think like a little rubber ball or something. I don't know. I flicked it, and it went into a cab and hit the cabbie in the face.
Oh, that would have infuriated me.
And he pulled out and rode us bumper to bumper for miles until he finally gave up. After that, I didn't get out and apologize anymore. And I wasn't even trying to be like, I don't know, I was just being silly, just being a teenager.
You catch so much abuse when you're a cab driver. I mean, that would have ruined my entire day.
I have a great story. We went across the bridge to Ohio once, and there were 5 of us in the car. And it would take me a while to figure out exactly who was in the car with us. But we were coming back across to Huntington, and there's like a little gas station there right by the bridge. And there was this cop standing by his car. Imagine, you've seen Cartman with the big cop hat and the glasses that reflect the mountains. I mean, he literally had a 2-foot wide hat on and these big glasses, and he was leaning against his
It
car.
was the same guy that helped me in the Carolinas.
Probably, yeah. And I am biggest supporter of cops in the world. I was a teenager. We looked over and saw this guy and all started laughing. And he jumped in his car and turned on the lights and just T-boned us, right? Put the front of his car right into the side of our car.
Because you were laughing?
And so he's got the lights on. So
That's why he became a cop.
So we pull over.
Like, that's funny, do you?
Listen, we pull over, and he gets a license and registration first, and he goes, "What you boys laughing at?" Nothing, officer. He told a joke in the back, and we all laughed. And of course, we were looking at him laughing. So
You are the joker.
that is a kind of it's a kind of sadism. Actually,
He went home
authority
and
sadism.
shot something or destroyed something. Nobody laugh at me again.
I was with a friend, Andy Hott, in Atlanta. Called up one night. No, actually,
It could have been Andy in the car with me here in Huntington.
We got a call. Oh, no. We got a call from our friend Brandon that owned and operated a club there, and it was like a random Wednesday or something like that. And he called and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" Nothing. You guys come down here. You can hang out and drink for free all night. There is no one here. I'm bored out of my mind. Come hang out with me. We're like, "No problem, Chief. We're on our way." So we come to the bar. We hang out. I had drinks all night. Andy was responsible and didn't drink because he was driving, and he was driving home. We hung out, we listened to music all night and talked. We're on the way home. Andy was looking, he was like, "Does my car feel or sound funny to you?" And I was like, "No, I don't think so. I'm wasted." And he was like, "I just feel like it's like shaky, blah, blah, blah." Get pulled over. So guy comes over and he goes, "You know why I pulled you over?" And he's like, Actually, I don't, sir, because I know I wasn't speeding because we were just looking at my dashboard as you pulled me. So I know I wasn't speeding. I felt my car doing something strange.
That Andy could infuriate a cop.
And he was like, no, you were swerving back there. And he was like, oh, well, I apologize. If I was, like I just said, my car seems funny to me. We were looking at my dash. Possibly I was looking at my dash, not looking up, and maybe I was, readjusting myself, whatever. Get out of the car. He pulls me and Andy. This is a minivan.
For the listeners, Andy has long hair. He is a rock and roll star.
Yeah.
He's a famous...
And you were trashed in the next seat.
Wasted.
Were you quiet or anything? Like, did you
Well, here's what I said. He said,
Y'all got mozzarella cheese sticks?
he said, before we get out of the car, he asked for our IDs. And I give him my ID, and he said, he looked at Andy. He's like, "You been drinking tonight?" And Andy's like, "No, sir. I have not had one drink." He goes, "How about you?" I said, "Yes, sir. I am highly intoxicated." And he goes, "So you're admitting right now that you're drunk?" I was like, "Absolutely. But you can also see that I'm in the passenger seat wearing my seatbelt. And you can also see from my ID that I'm above 21 years old." That's when he was, "Get out of the car."
Yeah.
So he apparently didn't like that.
I know. Don't tell me what I know.
He took the seats out of that minivan
To search it.
looking for stuff.
Wow.
We were sitting on the parking lot. One of his, he calls for backup. Dude comes out there and helps him. He left that car in pieces.
You had to put it back together.
As he leaves, he says, "Y'all free to go, but I know your buddy's high on ecstasy."
Talking to...
About me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, in their defense, you imagine what they have to deal with. I mean, imagine that is the one car.
He didn't have to deal with anything right there.
I'm saying
we weren't doing we were doing absolutely.
I'm saying you're the only one though.
He was-
In 20 cars he pulled over that month.
You peed him off, and he was
Right.
trying to find something. I had a similar story with a cop in Logan.
I know. Wait, this wasn't the speed limit's not a suggestion.
No, this was when they called me the N-word.
Wow.
You
But your
and-
pants were down.
I made the mistake of wearing baggy pants in Logan County. Have you guys not heard this story?
I don't think I've heard this story.
Even if I have, I want to hear it again.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so I used to date a girl that lived in Logan. Well, she went to school up here, but she was from Logan. And
They're cheaper up there.
she went home for the holidays on the big December break that Marshall gets. And so I drove down on Christmas Day and hung out, and I'm coming back. And on the way back, I still had my Geo Metro, and on the way back, it starts to overheat. So I stop at this Speedway in Chapmanville and buy antifreeze. And I go to put it in my car, and I spill some of it. And if you ever smelled antifreeze, it smells terrible.
Yeah.
So I also had a headlight out at the time that I didn't know. So I go to get back on Quarter G, and right beside where you pull onto the highway was a Chapmanville cop that pulled me over. So my car it was always just full of garbage
And
and
how big were the speakers?
gigantic. I had two,
It's the Bumpin' Geo.
yeah, I had two.
Was that your AOL screen name? Bumpin'
No,
Geo.
that's
Geo.
what Jerry christened me as. I did have two 15-inch speakers in my hatch at the time,
Worth more than the car.
probably. And I'm sure he heard it. So
Someone stole the car and left the speakers there. They were harder to move.
he pulls me over, and when he gets to the car, he is already like taking kind of an aggressive stance. And his buddy that's in the car comes over to my passenger side, and so he's talking to me, and he's like, "License and registration." So I hand it to him. He's like, something like, "Where you been or where you going?" And I was like,
Where are you from?
Where you from, boy?
We hadn't gotten to that point yet. So as he is asking me these questions, I'm like, I'm from Huntington. I drove down here to see my girlfriend on Christmas Day. I was like, I'm heading back. He was like, he didn't say, "Have you been drinking?" He said, "How much have you had to drink?" And I was like, "None." And he was like, "Well, I can smell it all over you." And I was like, "No." I was like, "You smell antifreeze because I just put some in my car and I spilled it." I was like, "Here's the container." And he's like, "Boy," he's like, "don't you talk back to me. Get out of the car."
I know a feller's been drinking antifreeze. When I see him, I do it all the time.
He was convinced
That you were drunk.
that I was drunk.
Did you have to do the walk?
Wait, just wait. So he gets me out of the car, and while he takes me back to his cruiser, his buddy is like tossing my car, looking for anything that they can try to use against me.
Wow.
So he brings me back and puts me in front of his cruiser and gives me a breathalyzer. Of course, it comes back completely clean. He made me do it 3 times. Then he goes to start patting me down. And I had khakis on, and they weren't like nut hugger khakis. I mean, they had a little bit of give to them. This is also 1999. So, you know, I had baggy khakis on, a big baggy t-shirt. And
It was
probably
our way.
Vans. I mean, I know back then fashion had not gotten to that point down there yet.
You
but-
play video games, boy?
Well, wait. So he pulls me over,
That
and
hairspray I smell.
I've got loudspeakers that sound like rap music, and then I also have baggy clothes on. So as he's patting me down, he gets to like my crotch area and grabs my pants, and he's like, "Pull your effing pants up, boy." He was like, "You're dressed like an N-word. Is that how people from Huntington dress, like N-words?" And I was like, "I am going to jail in Logan County on Christmas." I've never been so scared and mad at the same time.
Oh.
So
What year?
1999. So they get done with my car. They can't find anything. There's nothing that they can use to take me to jail because I didn't talk back. I didn't do anything. I just let them do it. I ended up getting a ticket, and they let me go and
For your headlight?
for my headlight. And then on top of that, when I told my group,
I got a 187 over here. It's a peckerhead wearing some clothes I don't like.
yeah. When I get back to Huntington the next day, I call and tell my girlfriend what happened, and somehow they knew somebody that worked at the
I was
courthouse.
going to say she knows him.
They already heard of the story.
You talking about JD pulled you over? That's my cousin Turley's best friend.
Just wait.
Love it.
So they were like, "Don't pay the ticket. We'll get it taken care of." And so I didn't. 6 months later, I get a letter from the DMV. They suspended my license because I didn't pay the ticket. It was this huge ordeal. And then on top of it, 6 years later, I'm watching the news in my house, and the same guy that pulled me over is on the news because he had been just beating the brakes off of people when he pulled them over. Man. So I emailed WSAZ and I was like, "This happened to me in 1999.
I got a story for
I
you.
love
Yeah.
it.
And they're like, "Would you be willing to come on camera and do an interview?" I was like, "No,
No.
absolutely not."
I will do it on my podcast when I'm ready.
Listen in 2022. No, absolutely not.
By the way, this is going to be the only episode we're selling. So, it's going to be 99 cents. I wish to God you would have done it though and had the blurred face with the people over and
Nope, I'm
The
not.
next scene would have been him in the background. You can see him.
You see a blurred head and a dirty Batman shirt.
I remember the day like it was yesterday.
Point on the doll where he touched you.
Show me where he touched you.
I never wore those pants again or dated a girl from Logan County.
Why do you always have so much trouble with your pants?
I mean, who thinks they're going to be in Logan County on Christmas getting accosted?
Would you just get a pair of jeans and end it? I know. I got a story for you.
I don't think I have any more.
These pants.
I don't think I have any more pants stories.
Oh man, no, that's never going to end.
That's
Those are the good old days. Your shirt, Andy, really fitting today because what we're talking about is what it was like. And you asked me what it was like. For me, it was weird because I think it was because I was so, I guess, straight-laced. Like I was, I wasn't into much. And
You work full time.
You obviously mentioned, since you were already playing music at the time, that so you were way into music at a young age, like both of us. What do you remember hearing that like really got you, that you were like, what was the first thing that like got you, like you super related to, that like got you, or have you ever been like that?
Pearl
Like,
Jam,
do you
Pearl Jam 10.
do you connect to music like kind of like autobiographical kind of like type
Yes.
of way,
Yes.
or do
Yes.
you just kind of?
Yeah, and
What was
he hit
it?
the nail on the head. I mean, there was an era of my life when I was figuring everything out, like as a 7th, 8th grade, and I liked, you could probably say I liked whatever. I would definitely say I was like your boy, in that what was going on, I was kind of going with. I mean, and and even at that time, I remember getting this feeling because I liked certain things like Def Leppard. I liked In Excess, and I felt like you could just don't say it. You know what I mean?
Nobody could know this.
Yeah, you're hanging around with your friends, like, don't say, like, isn't New Sensation a great song? Because they'll look at you like, what? We're listening to Dokken over here.
Real
And
quick,
what is that?
real quick. I want you to keep going with that. But do you remember? I remember having a conversation with you once, and you pinpointing, like you were like, I remember the day that when kind of what happened where me and you started playing music together, which was I was with a group of my punk rock friends.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this was at Pied Piper, the music store at the Huntington Mall. And I was there with my friends. We ran into you, and I mentioned that I really liked the new Savage Garden song. And all those guys turned on me like hyenas, dude.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me, you were like, that's when I knew that you were kind of more than like a punk rock kid,
Yep.
that you liked pop music.
I do remember that. I wouldn't have been able to pull Savage Garden out of the air.
It was the, ooh, I want you, I don't know if I need you.
Yeah, you know,
Cherry Cola.
as early, go back all the way, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I liked stuff that, in your clique, you were not supposed to like. And I remember even Free Fallin'. I remember,
Slayer sure is good, huh,
Yeah.
guys?
yeah, it was like that. It was like, you have to know this and think a certain way, or you're kind of like a nerd. And I remember liking things like In Excess, and what did I just say? I just said something like, I don't know.
Free Fallin'.
Free Fallin', yeah, Tom Petty. I remember liking Free Fallin'. I'm like, well, I can't say that because everybody will make fun of
But
it.
what was the record that
Telecaster.
did you have a record or an artist that was like when you heard it you were like that spoke to you?
Well, I mean, Andy already hit it. I mean, in the 9th grade, when I got a hold of Pearl Jam 10, I mean, it was every day I listened to the whole album, every single day, at least once. And I had a copy in when I started driving, I had a copy in the car, and it sort of opened a new idea. And the singles.
I totally get that from you because that's such a broken homes.
Well, I had a different experience than Wes because when I was 7th, 8th grade, I didn't have any friends. I had one buddy that I hung out with, and the album that I had that really kind of blew my mind before Pearl Jam was I was super into AC/DC. And when the Razor's Edge came out and like Thunderstruck and Money Talks came out, I completely got into their catalog, and they absolutely blew me away. And then I remember in the summer of '92, before I went to the 9th grade, I heard Temple of the Dog before I heard Pearl Jam.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, this is something that speaks to me. Like I felt an emotional response to it.
Was that on the single soundtrack?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to the mall and bought. No, I heard it on the radio.
Back
But
when
I
there was
remember
radio.
going to the mall that summer. I was in this program for poor kids where they like let us work for the school board for the summer, and at the end of it, I got this big paycheck, and my mom let me spend it on what I wanted to. And one of the things I bought was Pearl Jam 10 on cassette, and that really changed the course of my life as far as the music I listened to. And it was weird because like I had a really sheltered childhood. Like I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. Then around the exact same time, my mom and I moved out of the house that we lived in with my grandmother. We moved to where I lived by East. I met you.
Yep.
And then I got plugged into what I consider a normal teenage life. I had a girlfriend. I had friends. We started playing music together.
You worked at Taco Bell?
Worked at Taco Bell. Like that era of my teenage years really set the course for the rest of my life.
Do you remember I had a room kind of like this?
It was a lot
adult
like
size,
this.
And I actually didn't have a bed. I remember
You had a chair, a pull-out.
I had a couch that I would pull out and sleep on, and then put it all away. And I had like my room looked like a living room. I had a big, like tube style console television.
You had something over like in the corner, like this, like your door was over here,
Yeah.
and then you had something in the corner that your computer eventually was on.
I had big PA speakers, and I had like a PA amp. That was my stereo. I had
Maybe
a
that's
CD
what it was.
player and tape deck that I plugged into like channels on a PA system, which is so weird for a kid to have like a full PA in eighth and. Well, I mean, I was in a band. I had the PA. I had the powered head. It was like a rack mount, eight
that
channels.
right,
Up on your wall like tape.
that's such a West thing that he did because
I've got a full PA rig.
Well, right. Well, like when you start a band, you're like, well, I need this guitar and an amplifier. Wes is like, gotta get a mixing board, a PA system.
Guys, I had 2 mixing boards. One of them was a biamp with spring reverb that now is worth so much money. I probably threw it in the trash. It's unbelievable. But I had a little 4-channel biamp and I had an 8-channel. I don't know what it was, but we had lots of PA stuff. We were ready to rock.
I didn't even know what PA was when I was 14. It's just funny the experiences that you have as a teenager that really will shape the rest of your adult years.
It's true. You know, I'll often go back to Apollo 13. You guys ever seen that movie? Mm-hmm. You know, when they're trying to get home and they've got like 30 seconds of burn, right? And the burn is, you know, in space, you don't stop. You get a little burn. And he's got that triangle, Tom Hanks does, and he's got his hands on that thing. And when that burn stops, the Earth has to be right in the center of that. If it's like this over here, he's going to shoot past the Earth, no way home. If it's an inch over this way, they're not going to make it. They don't have another burn to correct.
Yeah.
And that is the teenage years. That is age 12, 13 to 16, 17. And whatever you're doing, that's in terms of your life, you know, it's 30 seconds, it's a minute. But it directs you to jail, to good things.
I think the reason that is when you're a teenager, you have this unbelievable heart, drive, fire, and like this just unextinguishable, just
Your logical brain hasn't been formed
no,
yet.
you're just so
It's a do or
like,
die.
You just everything. The smallest thing can like it's and it's funny, of course, when you grow up and you look back at like the stuff you really cared about. But like, it's like somebody like all the time. I'll say something like, I really wish I could play the piano. Somebody's like, well, why don't you learn how to play the piano? And I was like, because I'm not a teenager anymore. Because when you're a teenager, you have that kind of heart that you're like, I want this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to dedicate all my time to this. And that's the same reason, like how, you know, people make the funny jokes about how like, you know, like teen relationships and stuff like that, where they're, you know, this person that they've quote unquote been with for 2 weeks. It's like it ends in like, I loved him and it was, I'll never find someone. Like your heart is just so wrapped up. You're just overwhelmed with emotion and drive
an event that if it happened today would be a small thing.
It's the
Sure.
world.
It was 2-3 days, 5 days. Somebody said something. Everything is more accentuated. Everything is more compressed. And so, you know, now we would see somebody and not see him for 2 weeks, and it's no big deal. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
You know how many people I committed my life to as a teenager?
Got that tattoo. on your
Hopefully,
chest?
hopefully.
No,
Fred.
that was much older.
Well, to think about, like, I get, you know, it's just like I was talking about earlier. It's so easy just to be a jerk as a parent and get frustrated and like say if you hear your kids like talking about like how tough high school is, it's like, pfft, son, you ain't worked a day. Wait till you got bills and wait till you got this. But dude, when you're actually a teenager, there is nothing worse than high school. And it, you know, with your mind, when you're there and you're in it,
That's all you know.
it's also freaking terrifying,
It's
man. Like
all
you're going, like you
relative.
don't know, like these kids, like you're getting. I mean, whether you're getting picked on or whether you know you're having trouble with like a relationship with a girl or something, or you're trying. I mean, there's.
Or a Captain Ink pen.
I was getting ready to make an
Absolutely,
ink
dude.
pen
That's what I'm
joke.
saying, man. Well, I mean, it's awful. It's an awful place to be. But like as an adult, you just it's so easy
That's what
to
makes
look at
it-
these kids and be like, Psh, grow up. And like, no, they can't.
That's what makes a good parent is that you remember what that's like, so you can relate to your kid.
But I don't in the moment, and that's when I get frustrated with myself. Like I'm so quick to be like, "Oh my God, what are you wearing? Go back to your room. Why do you look like this? Give me 15 minutes so I can berate you and make you feel like a moron." And like I'm like, The next day, I'm like,
You're
why?
toughening him up.
Why? But no, I'm just being an asshole. That's
Yeah.
all I'm doing. Because I did the same thing with my dad. My dad, it was, I wanted to be a punk. And my dad was like, no, you're not dyeing your hair. No, you're not wearing that.
And why did you want to be that? Because you hung out with people that were also into that,
Sure.
right?
And to be fair, though, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier with my son, is I did feel that, though. Like, I wasn't. My concern with my son, and the reason I brought that up to begin with, is, like I was saying, I do know my son, and I do know where his heart is, and I know how smart he is, and I know the things that I see it. I fear that for him, it comes from a place of acceptance and trying to make friends, opposed to like going the route that he really feels like he wants to go.
Well,
That's the difference. When I was there, and you guys always tease me about the whole Green Day thing.
Yeah.
I understand all that, but when it's all about how my age and when I found that, because when the album Dookie came out in '94, when I was that age,
Yeah.
those guys were me and my friends, and they're singing about how they can't get the girl and how they're invisible and nobody pays attention to them, and how
What
they're
is that
just
to him? What is his version of
I
that?
don't think that stuff really exists anymore. If it is, I don't think he's really found that, or if that stuff's out there, I don't think he's found. Like he's
We'll
just,
have to listen to some New Country to figure out what it's
Well, you
about.
just got to think too. He just may not be with music like we are too. Like that's not every.
I can't
person's
relate.
gonna-
I can't relate to a world where
Yeah.
that I don't really listen to music. How? What do you do?
I think
Stand in the corner.
Whatever is important to kids nowadays, I don't think, it acceptance and relevance is probably
The
what
kid, he is so.
they want to be liked.
He is so.
Think about what makes you important on social media. It's literally called likes.
He's so smart. He's so smart, and he's such a good kid and can be so much. And it hurts me, and it scares me.
You're settling for this cowboy boots and
It hurts
redneck
me,
music?
and it scares. And it just hurts me and scares me to see him, to worry that he's being something that he's not, when what he is so awesome.
He'll eventually figure that out.
Okay, I'm going to say this because I was not a teenager, but I was 18, maybe 19, but probably 18. And I was on the road with my friends playing music. I remember calling my parents from Virginia Beach. It was a big show. There was a lot of people there. And it was one of those times like high on life, because sometimes we would play on the back of a truck and there would be goats next door, you know what I mean? And I didn't call my parents on those nights, and I didn't feel like it. But I remember calling my parents from this place just to check in, and I was telling them how, man, this has just been the great show. There's like 300 people here. It's packed. It's sweaty. It's just awesome. And my dad was like, that's great. That's great. I wonder how long you're going to do this. And I was like, did you not just hear I'm in this
Forever.
crappy room with 300 people and it was a great show and I'm probably going to make $50 tonight?
Right.
Probably forever. But my dad was right and he was worried, and that actually planted a seed. I mean, if he had come down on me like, you need to be home next month, I would have been like, screw you, whatever. But I would have been like, forget this. Keep your advice. But he planted a seed, and I mean, it took a few months and really a year for me to start going, you know what? I really don't need to be doing this when I'm, 30 years old or something. It had an effect on me. So
I remember that you telling me that after you came home. I'm like, because I couldn't understand why you would give that up. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even to get to the level that you guys got, that's something I always wanted to just at least experience. It amazed me that you're like the equivalent of the athlete that retires at the peak of their ability. You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen? Like, you didn't have any reason to quit, really. I mean, I know that there's more to the story, but I'm saying, like, you could have wrote it out for a few more years. Is what I'm
Yeah,
getting
But when
at.
you're actually doing it, it also seems like it's not a thing to you at all. Like, you don't realize while it's going on that this is actually kind of cool what we're doing.
You don't realize the good old days when you're in them.
Sure.
That's true.
It takes 20 years for you to look back and go, man, that was the good old days. I'd like to go back and ride that again, knowing what I know. And you can't. The good old days.
You can ride the lightning.
Circles back to
It's a circling back.
the good era of Metallica.
Before we leave teenager before we leave teenager years, I got to talk about phone freaking. In the 90s, we didn't even know what it was. You know, there weren't all these documentaries and stuff. And you remember all the stuff we used to do with phones and prank phones and crap? And, you know, nowadays people don't even think about landlines. They're all cell phones, and you can now get a call and bring somebody in on it, and it's no big deal. But back in our day, that was a big deal. It cost like $4 or $5 a month to have that, and you could do what's called three-way calling. You could call somebody and then hit flash on a landline phone. It would go boop, 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 and give you another dial tone. You could dial somebody else. And when they first turned it on, I know guys like me caused this change. But we would call somebody, and then as soon as it started ringing, hit flash and dial another number and hit flash again. And if you did it fast enough, you could actually hear both calls ring at the same time, like ring, 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 ring. And then they would answer. And remember, we would take a speakerphone. Were you ever with me when we did that?
Yes.
So we would call like two girls that knew each other, that we knew, and call them at the same time. They both would pick up and each think the other called. And we're on mute with a speakerphone. Then we'd send, I think I'd send Jerry to the payphone. Jerry, go call. I may be thinking of somebody else, but
This really took off when you started calling different Chinese restaurants.
I did call the Chinese and the Japanese restaurant. And I linked them together, and they're both trying to figure out, why are you on my phone?
No, you called me.
And we were just laughing. That's coming out. Oh no. Do it again without the impersonation, and I'll let it stay in.
Come on, man. Come on.
That was the good old days, and we didn't know.
You know, it's funny that, speaking of which, like, last week was the 2-year mark of you leaving there.
Yeah. It's July 20th was my first day.
It was, thinking about that made me think about the incredible amount of change that has happened in, at least just in my life,
In 2 years.
in those 2 years. And I mean, I don't know if that same thing happens to you guys, but like, there are moments in your life that you can look back on and see the beginning of a different era starting. And for me, that was starting to work with you. From that point until now, which has been like 4.5 years, the amount of change that has happened in my life has been probably more than the previous decade or longer.
Probably 20 years, I would say. It's almost like a teenager looking from the age 19 back to age 13. You know,
Yeah.
that seems like an eternity. It's really 6 years, and now we just blink and it's gone. But in those days, like, that is that hot, you know, burning, trying to find your way in your direction. And that 6 years, I bet you've had as much change in this 6 years as you did at that stage in your life.
Speaking of that analogy you made, like, I think as a teenager, like, I was heading towards the earth. And then in my mind, I hit about 20, and then all of a sudden an asteroid just comes out of nowhere and knocks me off course. And it took me 20 years to get back to where I'm
That's
going.
not an asteroid. That's a crack rock, son.
Some kind of rock. I don't interrupt.
Yeah, not anymore. I want off the ride.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, drop us a line at askandy@colormedad. That's DADD.com. We want to thank the good old boys at the OzarkMountainDaredevils.com for the killer bumper tune. Check them out. And check us out on the web at colormedad. That's DADD.com.